Welcome to an update of my thoughts about the Gran Turismo community. As you all may remember, roughly a year ago, I did a video about how the community of Gran Turismo sport players, meaning pretty much the people who are still around, but acknowledging the people who've been around before too and understanding why they ain't around anymore for whatever reason, combined make the best community in gaming, meaning essentially the people who interact with each other, whether that's directly from playing the game or talking in chats or online lobbies or whatever, which has to be parties now because GT Sports still doesn't have online chat in the game itself, or on forums or whatever it may be, and again to just racing with each other. Words can say some stuff, but in my opinion your actions on track say more. It depends on the person and all that, but when it's talking about a racing game, I still hold that statement true. And I think that's may be more true than ever now, meaning the actions on track say more about your words, more than the Gran Turismo being the absolute best of best communities. Is GT in general still the best community? Well, from a Gran Turismo fan, I'm probably still going to say yes, but in hindsight, there's a lot of communities that I still don't have that much connection to, such as like Forza, or really that much anymore Need for Speed, or stuff like that. Granted, I think it's pretty obvious Need for Speed's getting pretty dead in the water, because a lot of people have a pretty cotton-picking negative opinion about EA. I gave my opinions about EA in a video a while ago, and I tried to make it as positive as I could, being as a child an EA fan, but I mean, as a child, I was also quite a bit of a Polyphony Digital fan, and y'all may know my thoughts about that now. But again, as in last video, that ain't really the true point of what I'm talking about the Gran Turismo community. How much they like or dislike the game themselves is how well does it go as a community. Meaning, are people having fun racing with each other? Not necessarily having fun with the game's mechanics, just can they make whatever is available with the game fun with each other? And after a year from the last video that I did, I think the quality of people having fun with each other is kind of starting to go down. Some of y'all may be thinking that's just linear. The game's been out for that much longer, so obviously less people are going to have tons of fun, just because, I mean, the game ain't as new anymore. And yes, that's correct, that's part of it. But in this year span, Gran Turismo Sport in general still be having updates, and probably at least for the near future, at roughly the same rate as it was when I did the first video. So the content is still roughly the same, and it's still roughly the same volume of new content. So, yes, you could get bored with the old stuff, but you could have got bored with the old stuff a year ago, too, and we're still getting kind of the same amount of new stuff. So why do I say the community isn't really going as well? Because they're not really racing as good with each other. And the main example of this is because nowadays it almost seems like the community more than ever is starting to get forced to race with each other, whether they like it or not. Especially at the top part of the community. Granted, as I said many times before, repetition for competition is perfectly fine. If you're having to race a lot of races with the community just to become a faster driver, that's probably not that much of a negative. But when it becomes that you're kind of sort of starting to be forced to do that, not on your own accord, is when it starts becoming kind of iffy. The example that I'm giving here, essentially, and one of the main reasons I ain't showing it is because it's meant as a negative, is Gran Turismo Sport FIA Championships. And also, to an extent, the Toyota Super Cup, but I'll discuss that in a bit, but mainly the FIA Championships. Last video about this, the one about a year ago, and a lot of videos in general, I praised FIA Championships for being more unique than the weekly races, because they happen more often than the weekly races. There's 2 new events for FIA week versus 1 for weekly races nowadays. And they promote more competition because there's points, so it makes more people actually do them. Weekly races don't have that much of a crowd, mostly because they're weekly and somewhat because they aren't that competitive. But now FI races have gotten to the point in which they're so competitive, it's sort of to a negative. For some people, it may be better than ever, but people like me who... I understand I'm not the very best in the world, but I also want to try to make myself better. Now that the amount of time I've put trying to make myself better has honestly, if anything, just made me worse and burnt out and not care and just... That's somewhat to do with the game's mechanics itself, but also somewhat with the community. I've put many examples on my channel of just general people racing dirty, or general people exploiting the penalty system, and especially on rantating, which again linked in the description, but I'm not going too much there. Because while this is somewhat of a rant, it's meant to be more of an analysis, and I mean, I'll mention some positive. This is about the Gran Turismo community as a whole, not necessarily the negatives. I'm just making it more total negative than the last video. Now, how does that relate to the community, just my experiences? Well, I've had less experiences recently, just because I ain't racing on my main account. But I will say this, some people who have raced on my main account in the past, between the very top in the world and below, I don't want to, like, call out anyone, because some people might think they are really good, but whatever happened in the past mean their DR is lower. I'm not going to criticize that because I'm exactly in the same boat. Some of them have experienced some, well, I'll just say community-altering actions. And this isn't necessarily just about the game itself. Granted, there's still a lot of negatives about the game, which I've discussed time and again, and probably still will have to. But that still doesn't excuse some of the stuff happening with people. The best example of this is something beyond me have just documented, but a lot of people have, is ultimately just exploiting the whole system in which the game has in place. Whether that be the point system, the race entry system, however you want to word it. Something I said earlier in the video about pretty much forcing people to do competition, repetition type thing. You have to be repetitive to have a chance of being competitive at all. Well, that's because I very much agree with rubbing as racing, and always have, and I don't see why I won't always will. But it's getting to the point in the FI races where people are pretty much going for points at all costs. It's pretty obvious now people know how to exploit the penalty system, which, yes, that's a hit on the game and not the game's community. But a lot of people have figured out that hit on the game, so therefore that in and of itself affects the game's community. As I said in the first video, I kind of saw this happening. If the game's not really going to improve, the community is going to slowly go downhill because, I mean, like with anything, if something's worse for a longer time, the people involved with the worst thing are going to get more angry, and then chaos ensues. For literally any example, pretty much, whether it be something as serious as like government issues, or something as simple as just, I mean, like this, like a video game. Granted, this is up there for a more serious video game, that's for sure. But a lot of people still just don't want to race it all that serious, but if they want to be taken seriously, have to now. Look at an example being Immortal Pilot of 5 to 10 years ago. He made a quite big YouTube channel, especially for 5 to 10 years ago, which again I mentioned with the previous community video. 5 or so years ago, the biggest Gran Turismo YouTube channel was probably only like a fourth of the size of what it is now, and probably overall the YouTube community is 10 or so times smaller. Immortal Pilot still made quite a channel for himself because he did the Gran Turismo seasonal events, meaning the time and drift trials, and well, those happened between every 2 weeks to every month. You could do those repetition for competition, and generally, to be the very best, well, you did. So you're purposely doing that repetition for competition, and you're wanting to, because it's more than anything competition against yourself. With the time and drift trials, the only real variable is yourself. I've showed that Gran Turismo 6 penalty system is more severe than the Gran Turismo Sport one when it comes to the competitive aspect. But the Gran Turismo 6 competitive aspect was you versus yourself, meaning only time and drift trials. There's no other physical competitors on the track, so it didn't really matter how stern or weak the penalty system itself was, because it was the same for everyone, and everyone didn't have to deal with everyone else's things. You only went against yourself. So ultimately, the strictness of the Gran Turismo 6 penalty system didn't matter. So while yes, Immortal Pilot did many thousands of miles on those races, he ultimately got a lot of times what he wanted to do, first in the world. Granted, he didn't, that I could tell, do tons of like the GT Academy style races. He wasn't out too much in the public eye. I don't think he necessarily ever did a face camera videos, but nonetheless, he was still well respected, well enjoyed. Like, people kept on going back to his channel as well as understood what they were watching and knew how incredible it was. And most importantly, was just benefited the community, because he posted his laps online, people could see how he did them, and then people attempted to replicate it to however they wanted to. If they wanted to do the repetition for competition and try as much as they could stand, then that's what they did. Or they might have just ran good enough to get whatever their goal was and then stop, whether that just be get the gold medal, get top 10,000 in the world, whatever it may be. But come Gran Turismo Sport, I think stuff happened with Immortal Pilot's personal life. I don't know the exact story of that. But nonetheless, stuff also happened with the Gran Turismo Sport side of things. There is no against yourself type competitive nature anymore. The only style of against yourself with Gran Turismo Sport anymore is qualifying for races. But you still have to do the races themselves. Back in GT6, while there was GT Academy, time and drift trials were still such a part of it that you didn't necessarily have to do GT Academy to be considered one of the greatest drivers. Now, GT Sport, well, there ain't GT Academy. But there is the FI races. Now, well, two now. Essentially, where there is no against yourself competition now, if you want to be the very best, you have to do as good as everyone else in terms of practice, or else you just physically can't keep up anymore. Which, granted, does that sound like such a bad thing on paper? No. But in reality, quite a lot of the very best people in a lot of quote-unquote esports, people have different definitions of what that is and such, but I think it's fair to say, for defining esport, I think people consider Gran Turismo Sport closer to an esport than a lot of video games that consider themselves that. Example being, NASCAR Heat 3 has esports. NASCAR Heat 3 is, well, it's not too much better than PS2 graphics, and it's not too much better than the original NASCAR Heat physics, also from PS2. Gran Turismo Sport gets monthly updates, and despite all of the negatives I said to it, definitely sounds the best of any Gran Turismo game. In my opinion, it looks better than any console game, and people have different definitions of what drives the best, but I will say this, Gran Turismo has the biggest budget of any of them, so at least they can make their stuff presented as if it drives the best, and ultimately money is the main draw. So, take that as you may, but essentially what I'm saying is overall, Gran Turismo Sport of all racing games, in my opinion, has the best presentation to be an esports game, and I think I don't think it's the majority of people's opinions, but I think it's the most people's opinions, meaning it ain't over 50%, but it's more than any other racing game. So let's just say GT Sport is a good platform for esports, is what I'm saying. And now that we have that situated, esports in general can be a lot of formats. In some instances, it is more of a time trial aspect. In some instances, it's like Gran Turismo Sport, where it's actual races. And in some things, it could actually lead to real life stuff. Supposedly, GT Sport will eventually lead to real life stuff, go from esports to reality. I'd assume it will do that, especially because Gran Turismo itself has done that since 2008 with GT Academy. But for now, it's still not going to the real life aspect. The best of the best can go to tournaments, but beyond the tournaments, do they get paid anything? No. Unless you make it to a tournament, you get tangibly nothing. Granted, the experience of racing against other people is wonderful, and it's definitely best if you get the chance to do that. The chance, meaning a chance, one chance. To do that, it's definitely worth taking, in my opinion, no matter how much effort you have to put in for a chance. But time after time, to continue keeping that up when everybody else is trying to do the same thing, is it really worth it? Not really, and I'm not the only one saying that anymore. I mean, there's big YouTubers out there saying it, and it's far from just one. In other videos, I didn't necessarily give names, but I mean, here I've already started to, so I may as well. Z28 said stuff about it, Nick McMillan said stuff about it. A lot of people said stuff about it on GT Planet, whether they have a YouTube channel or not. And obviously I've said stuff about it. You shouldn't necessarily have to race non-stop just to try to keep up when you're not getting anything tangibly out of it. It's penalizing the people who have to get tangible things in life to live, pretty much. I'm on summer vacation right now. I worked hard enough in school, not trying to gloat or anything, but I mean, it's truism right yonder. I do more than 5 hours of homework a night on average, which is annoying, but it physically pays off. What I'm saying is I have my school paid for, so I'm doing alright. But not everyone has that luxury. Some people have to go to work all year. Like, at least I'm on summer vacation now. But in general, the rest of the year, I have pretty much, I would consider it work for college. I don't physically, like, have an internship in college yet, but where I'm getting to be senior year, it might be coming. But everyone has to have some sort of income, whether it just be it's already provided to them, or they have to provide it themselves, whatever. Essentially what I'm saying, for those who have to provide income for themselves in whatever way, shape, or form it is, the effort they put in to do that takes away time in which to play the game. So essentially the format that Gran Turismo has it right now, where they pay no tangible things, whether it be straight up income from sponsors or whatever it may be, or even just somewhat of a provision type thing. Like, for the amount of effort you put into the game, you get back some sort of tangible thing, whether it even is just like a t-shirt or something. If you rank whatever top in the event, you get a t-shirt saying you're there. Even just something that you actually get as a goal to continue, more than just a number on a screen that may get you to an event, or it may not if you don't get that high enough number. Let's say too, even if you get to the event, unless you literally finish first in the entire event, whatever it may be, like the World Tour that Nico Racing was in, or the finals that Igor Fraga was in, whatever it may be, unless you finish first in that, that's it too. Granted, you can make the events again, but that means you have to put on all that much effort again. Unless you physically win the event too, that's it. You get a few days of paid travel. Granted, it's still an extremely nice area, but that's it. You put in weeks to months of effort for a few days of benefit. Is that worth it? Probably it is once. But then even to that, it goes to the previous thing that I said too, of, is it worth getting the experience over and over again? For some people, it probably is, but for others, I can pretty much guarantee it ain't. Because still, let's say even if you paid to go to the thing, it goes back to the previous issue that I said too, is what happens if you pay yourself, meaning you have to go to whatever work it may be, or college, or whatever it is. Well, you can go to the thing and have that room and board paid for. I don't even know if they pay for food. I don't know. I'm gonna assume yes, because a lot of those videos showed like a snack plate and all that. So I'd assume probably you can eat off that enough to be fine. I don't know. You probably want to bring money to it anyway, just to buy stuff while you're to the events, blah, blah, blah. But let's just say even all that's paid for. If you're missing time in the real world, getting money, those are really nice things, so it's probably a net, quote-unquote, profit, but still, whatever you're doing, probably gonna look at you a bit iffy for missing time to do playing a video game, essentially, whether they understand the esports aspect or not. Still, nonetheless, you're not benefiting them at that time, which is fair enough. And even if you're not making direct money from something, going to that event in and of itself is a taxing experience. Whether it's taxing positive or negative, you're on a big stage there. If you don't get exactly to your expectations, then who knows how that's going to hurt later on. Y'all know how internet goes. If you mess up while you're on the internet, it's going to be known forever. And those videos get 30-something thousand people watching, I think, at once between all the regions. And just some people stream it on YouTube themselves, too. That ain't as much as it used to be when it was on physical TV. Like, before it was on Spike TV and GT Academy. But it's still quite a lot. If you do what you consider disappointing there, then who knows of what your motivation will be to continue at all. And let's say you do everything you can and end up being disappointed by not getting there at all. It's still the same situation. Granted, I'm a confident person. I think that's fair to say, especially on my quote-unquote internet alias, or whatever you want to call that. As I said in many a video, I'm not too far from this in my real life, for better or worse. Take that as you may. I try to be pretty honest and such, but some people ain't quite like that. Like, if I make it to the final event, as I said, maybe best case scenario, if the tracks are like Tokyo Expressway, Central Adaloop, and then karts, and then Big Willow with a slow car, and then Tokyo Expressway, Central Interloop, I may just barely scratch the very bottom tier of making it. And I would go for that one time, because I'd only ever be able to make it once, too. And I would finish last, pretty much guaranteed. I would still enjoy this experience, but I'd never make it again. Not because I'm embarrassed, because I finished last in the thing online, but because I'm just not talented enough to. But I still think y'all get where I'm going with this. Granted, more than anything, I'm talking about a lot of the top people, but when the main draw of Gran Turismo Sport as a whole is the sport, it's supposed to be meant to be competitive and such, there needs to be more motivation for it to be competitive than just a crapshoot. You're not even guaranteed to get in a good lobby, no matter how fast you are. If you don't get in a good lobby, even if you win the race, you might not get enough points to make it to whatever your goal is. The very best most likely will make it no matter what, but even then, they might not win. Some of them's already won. Like, if you know you have a true legitimate chance of winning the entire thing, it's definitely worth it. But if you know that, while I do very much hope you're watching this video doesn't necessarily pertain to you. It doesn't pertain to, it's hard to even give a true percentile to that, because still the overall Gran Turismo Sport sales haven't been announced. But it's literally not even a percentage. It's literally the top 10 or so people in the world definitely benefit from all this. But it's hard to really say how the best do. And how does this relate to the Gran Turismo community as a whole? Well, it does kind of to an extent, because I think at this point, I would consider Gran Turismo community those who are still fairly active, and whatever it may be, might not even be playing Gran Turismo Sport, because I ain't gonna lie, I'm not too active anymore in playing Gran Turismo Sport, but I'd still consider myself a contributing part of the community, because I still do videos, I still am on GG Planet, I still watch others who are still racing. I think that's a good call of if you're in the Gran Turismo communities, if you still pay attention to it, whether you're not truly competing in it. If you're paying attention to it, I would still say you're contributing to it. As with YouTube, been said many a time, views are important, likes are important, subscribe is important, all that. So essentially, if you're aware of what's going on in the community, I would say you're part of it. And if you're still doing that at this point, being aware of it, if you're aware of GT Sport at this point, you're probably aware of the FIA Championships. And you're aware of why it's kind of hard to do the FIA Championships in the game, like the penalty system and stuff. And this is kind of the point of the video too, is to make people more aware of the underlying situations of it. Like, not just the penalty system, but also what's the true motivation of continuing unless you are truly the best of the best. That affects all of the community. To an extent, it's the vocal minority aspect of it too. A lot of people in the Gran Turismo community that get seen are either seen because they're really good, really vocal. Y'all can make your own opinions on if I'm just really vocal or if I stand as really good, or both. I'm going to say neither, but y'all can make your own opinions on that. Or you're quote-unquote like a figurehead or something. Like you're in with PD, or you're like a moderator for a big racing series or forum or whatever it may be. I think Gran Turismo, still for better or worse, has a vocal community more than the majority of communities. But I still wouldn't say it's a majority of people that are super vocal, because it just never is, and that's to be expected. But again, as I said, just viewing the community, aware of it, I think is enough to be considered part of the community. Whether you're physically talking about it, or if you're just aware of it by viewing it, either or is fine. It's still part of the community. Obviously, commenting about it if you want to is a good thing to do. But again, that leads to the whole thing, if you want to. You shouldn't be forced to comment about the community. You shouldn't be forced to compete to the point in which it's physically hurting your daily life in the community. Again, not too many people are to that realm of where it's physically hurting their daily life, trying to compete in the Gran Turismo community. But a lot of people still in the community are becoming aware of this stuff starting to happen. Again, the awareness is more towards the game itself, like the penalty system and such, but still. I don't exactly know for sure how Gran Turismo could go about trying to make it to where people have more of a reason to compete. If it's still going to affect their personal lives, some people just straight up ain't. But we do know that Gran Turismo Sport has many a sponsor now. There's FIA, and Red Bull, and Toyota, and all of the rest. We know that a lot of this is through YouTube. And YouTube obviously has sponsorships and all that too. Like a lot of the big Gran Turismo YouTubers, and it's fine that they do, have ads on their channels. So that they themselves can make money from it. And therefore they can probably continue. But while they are definitely part of the vocal minority, I mean, they definitely help the Gran Turismo community tons. A lot of even just people in the YouTube community of Gran Turismo as well, which is still the minority, and they're the majority of that community, don't make money from it, me included. As usual, I don't want to make money on this channel necessarily for a lot of reasons, and that's fine. But some people, it's just not as fine of a thing. there's always the age-old debate of, yes, you have to put in a lot of effort to get where you're going for, and I understand that. But what happens if you don't get what you're going for, and you still put in all that effort to the point of it affects things that have always and will always matter? Like a video game, it comes and goes no matter how well you do in that video game. Like Igor Fraga, despite his incredible efforts in championships, I mean, when he's 70 years old, I'm sure he'll look back at this and say, yes, this is an incredible moment. But will he still be directly benefiting from what he did today? Or doing today, however you want to word that? Probably not. Will he have memories from it? Yes. Will he have tangible stuff from it, like trophies and all the gifts and stuff he got from the event? Yes, but still. There's no long-term solution to this type of thing. So they need to at least benefit people in the short term as good as possible. Am I necessarily saying give people money for just competing in events? No, because I understand that's impossible. But here's the thing, too. Maybe it's not even if you finish high in an event. Maybe it's just you do all of the races and you get something or another. Because GT Academy did this to an extent in the past. All the things were tied directly to Gran Turismo. It was nothing in the real world. But like GT Academy had the thing, if you competed all the events and got bronze in all of them, you got the cars for the events. Like in GT Academy 2015, I think it was, you got the Nissan GTR race car, the front-wheel drive one. In 2012, I think it might have been 12 and 13, you got the Nissan 370Z. Even just that would be better than nothing. Give you tangible things for doing the events. May not be possible, but give you something in a video game, that's better than nothing. Well, yes, I'm saying if you compete enough, probably something tangible would be nice. But the definition of enough, I'm not going to argue. That's hard to define. And no matter what, even if you're just barely off the cutoff to get enough, you might argue it as well. The best solution, I would say, is make it a time cutoff for what's enough instead of a ranking cutoff for what's enough. Granted, there's probably exploits to that, just like as of now, people are exploiting rankings for whatever reason. And how, like, whatever reason they are exploiting rankings. Not why they're doing it, but whatever reason exploit is happening for is what I mean. And that's messed up. But at least if people are quote-unquote exploiting the way in which they get a tangible thing, at least they directly benefit from it. Sort of, kind of, nobody benefits from it. Because most likely they still won't make it to the tangible going somewhere. And I can guarantee if you're exploiting the rankings now, you ain't gonna win the tangible thing. You ain't gonna win the FIA World Tour, or you ain't gonna win the finals. And that's the guarantee. The best of the best ain't gonna cheat, and they're gonna get there. But we already know there's a lot of people who still sort of kind of are. And we know for a fact that's gonna continue. But we also know the majority of people, even those who ain't in the vocal minority, we know the majority of people out there are quite solid citizens of the Gran Turismo community. As corny as that sounds, I mean, it's truism. A lot of people are good people, and they deserve to be treated and recognized as such. That's the wonders of the community aspect as a whole, is the community can help each other be recognized and all that. But being recognized online can only go so far. To an extent, it has to become in the real world, too. Now, am I saying if somehow I got paid some type of tangible thing, whether it not even be money, but just something, would I continue racing on my main account? If it's a time spent doing it thing, I probably would over summer vacation, just because I have a lot of time now. But long term, I still wouldn't, just because I'm not enjoying the game itself much. But there's still a lot of people out there, and I don't fault them for it, who enjoy the game quite a lot. And they shouldn't be penalized just because they enjoy the game, want to play it, want to be competitive, but don't have the time to do it. If y'all have any ways in which you think the community could improve without a tangible aspect, leave it in the comments. But I mean, that's sort of the point in this video too, is not everyone should have to comment on an issue like that. Again, the whole vocal minority thing. I understand a lot of people just are aware of it, and that's to an extent enough. As long as you're contributing to the community, whether it be viewing it or doing more, you're still part of the community and should matter just as much as anyone else. I don't want to pick favorites of people on my channel, whether you're subscribed or not, whether you're just viewer, whether you're comment or whatever. If you're part of my community, I consider everyone beneficial. I'm not going to call anyone out for not doing certain things. And that's how I feel like it's to be with the Gran Turismo community as well. Everyone should be recognized in some way, shape, or form by Gran Turismo itself. As of now, just the winning manufacturer, people of that manufacturer get money in the game. As of now, just the winning country, same way. In my opinion, everyone who's still contributing should get something. Granted, it is pretty hard to give someone something for just viewing things, but still. At the very least, if you put in X amount of time in GT Sport, you should get Y as a reward. Period. That seems fair, especially because it's been done before. How it can be done to where it doesn't break the bank? Wow, I mean, I'm not a professional in that thing. I shouldn't have to be figuring that out. But that's the point, kind of all things considered, is the general community should not have to figure this out for the heads of GT itself, whether it be Sony or PD or FIA or a combination of all of them. That's not our problem. We shouldn't have to be figuring that out, but we also shouldn't be suffering because no one's figured this out yet. As of now, I don't think it's going to get any better either, because even if Gran Turismo 7 doesn't have this in it, people are still going to be putting a lot of time in that at this point too, because it's still definitely going to be an online oriented game, because all games are. Granted, it's looking like it'll have a lot better offline thing, which is definitely good for the community as a whole. That's why I'm showing the offline bits now. So while it can get boring at times, it's still a consistent thing. Like, there's nothing to really get mad at the offline part. It's definitely going to be positive no matter how much it's there. Any more is a positive, just straight up. But online is here to stay, whether you like it or not. Whether you like the format it's at or not. And that's what needs changed. Any offline editions is good. But online can definitely be a gray area, and that's the gray area that needs figured out. Add any offline stuff, and we're good. Whether it's just rehashes of old stuff or completely new stuff, nonetheless, it's still positive. But online, if you're going to add stuff, there can still be controversy with it. Can people physically do the stuff until still have time for real world? Is the stuff added a thing that's going to get exploited, whatever it may be? And that needs figured out in order for the Gran Turismo community to still be able to strive. As of now, I think the community is doing overall worse than before. And I think it can still improve. People are exploiting it as it is now. And those who don't have the time to exploit it are getting penalized because of it. And that's not fair. And as of now, that certainly ain't worth a yeehaw. But maybe, just maybe, something can be done about it. Am I expecting it to? No. But that's like a lot of videos in the past, though.